Now, I believe we have an email coming in next. So let's have a look at what we're being sent. So, Gavin from London, again nearby, telling us that Saudi Arabia claims it's defending Arabs from Iran and other countries. Number one, Bahrain hasn't been attacked by Iran or anyone. Two, Israel bombed Lebanon for 34 days. Saudi sent no soldiers to protect Arabs and even criticized Hezbollah and governments for fighting back. And number three, Israel bombed Gaza for 22 days, killing 1,400 Sunni Arabs. But no soldier from Saudi, no support from Saudi. So where is Saudi getting its orders from? Well, I mean, that's pretty, I think, straight to the point, Gavin, that Saudi Arabia is in a very close alliance with the United States. And the double standards, I think, of these nations when it comes to the Palestinians is breathtaking, particularly during the slaughter that happened in 2008, 2009. Were there any calls for a no-fly zone? Was there even criticism? If there was, it was very, very muted. So I think that, you know, I think this just explains to you the history of Saudi Arabia's position, the way that the British put them in power there to control the region. And remember, a lot of it is about the three-letter word, oil. And it started when oil was discovered in Persia in 1908, then in Saudi Arabia in 1930s. So, you know, you don't have to be a genius to find the causes of these alliances that have taken place. And yes, Saudi Arabia is claiming that Iran is threatening in the area. I mean, Iran and Saudis have been traditional groups that have rivalries in the areas. And Saudi Arabia keeps claiming that Iran is interfering, but there's very little evidence of that. The protests in Bahrain, where 70% of the people are Shia, is something that spontaneously came up after the protests everywhere in Tunisia, in Egypt, because they suffered the same discrimination as these people and shared their goals. Another email is coming up. This is Callahan from London. Britain recently published a human rights report, but they hardly mentioned anything about what is happening to Shias in Bahrain or why Saudi is occupying another country. Yeah, I mean, certainly some human rights reports tend to think that they can miss out politics. And as we see from that email, there was a sort of gap in that. You know, you can talk about some of the things that have happened to people, and these are all very tragic, of course, in terms of human rights, but you're not saying why it happened. And if you look at Bahrain, it's now got an occupying army, a foreign army, to control its own people. I mean, what do you think the people feel there? And remember in Bahrain as well, even the Khalifa's army, before the Saudis went in, most of those people are foreigners that have come from Pakistan, from Jordan, from elsewhere, Sunnis that have been brought in, put on a uniform, and then put down their own people. Now, no serious organization can be like that. No serious government, surely, can control their people effectively with foreigners running it. I think we've got now another caller coming in. They're coming in thick and fast. We've got Glenn from the south of England. Hello, Glenn. How are you?
Oh, hello, I'm fine. I just thought I'd call in, Phil, to comment on how naive the media reporting of the situation concerning Libya is. You know, we're told that the Americans and British and French governments are only concerned about the rights of the people being persecuted by Gaddafi. You mentioned at all about the three-letter word oil, or about the massive profits being made by the munitions profiteers, and no mention also about extreme double standards about the fact that Israel has been slaughtering people for God knows how long, and not one finger is Israel Western governments. And also, of course, about the horrendous situation in Bahrain, where every book is being violated by the Bahraini monarchy. And also another factor which hasn't, I don't think, been given a lot of attention, the possibility or likelihood that France, for example, is trying to resurrect its own imperial ambitions and territorial ambitions in North Africa. Don't forget, at one time it had colonies stretching from Tunisia to the Atlantic Ocean, and it treated the citizens of those states very, very badly.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you recall a couple of weeks ago when the UN resolution passed, you had the British Prime Minister David Cameron, the French President, Nicolas Sarkozy. They were jumping up and down as if they'd been injected by some new drug. And what were they doing? They were declaring war. And they thought this would make them more popular in their own countries. Now, that's a terribly sad thing to say, that Western politicians think war can improve their ratings in the polls by killing people elsewhere, abroad, is somehow part of that. But of course, there's huge hypocrisy in the media, as you mentioned. And, this comes down to the fact that when a country's at war, that nation's media can't be impartial. And, you've got all the Western, and you've got indeed journalists from other organizations with the rebels in Benghazi there, and you've got a real sense of good guys and bad guys. Now, it's a lot more complicated than that in my view. That doesn't mean that you have, a choice of saying, well, do you support, if you oppose the intervention, do you support Gaddafi, who himself is a tyrant? He's killed many, many of his own people. But let's try and cut through the rubbish and really work out what's going on. And if there is a genuine attempt to help civilians, let's everybody get together to try to work out how that should be the case. And that means everybody, not just members of the UN Security Council and their loyal Arab friends. Next call, I believe, is from Ismail in London about NATO. Ismail, are you there? Calling from London.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for calling, sir.
I'd like to comment on really Libya and NATO and all of the involvement that they've got in Libya. First of all, having gone through that country when I went on a convoy to Palestine, we saw how the local people supported the movement, of the convoy going to Palestine and in support of a oppressed, community. I think moderate conspiracy theorists like myself, I think it's much more bigger than that. This thing in Libya and NATO's involvement is much more serious. They're not only going after the oil. They already own Iraqi oil and Afghani oil now, and the major pipelines are owned by the West, and they're securing that. What they're doing is stationing themselves within the Middle East. There was Britain led the sort of invasion now in Libya, when clearly the Libyan people said, we don't want foreign intervention. We want just basically them to have a watchful eye. But yeah, like you were saying, the double standards. Where was the foreign intervention when Israel was bombing the hell out of Gazans? Where was the intervention when the Zionist regime was bombing Hezbollah, that group? Or that
in 2006, that war, exactly. No attempts. Nobody spoke of a no-fly zone there.
No, not even a no-fly zone. It's clear now. People can see it as clear as crystal clear that there's different agendas. What people are seeing and what they're being shown by Western media is completely different to what is actually going on there. They're going after not only just the oil in Libya, but there's a natural resource. In order for them to stay there, they're going after, and this is a conspiracy theory, but the water. Libya apparently has the natural sources of water there, lots of it, and they want to be controlling that area for that resource.
Okay, well, listen, thank you for that point of view. Of course, it is, complicated what is going on in Libya. It's certainly not black and white, and unfortunately the media is presenting it in that way. Though I think, as a former caller said, it does give the West a foothold again when it was losing track of what was going on in the Middle East in terms of all the rebellions. And as another caller said, it might actually sort of make intervention, which had a terribly bad name in the West after the war in Iraq, it might give it a kind of a new sugarcoating in Libya. And I think that's possibly an attempt to justify a new colonialism. That's certainly a view. Meher is our next caller. He's in Surrey. Thank you for calling. What have you got to say, sir?
Yeah, I wanted to speak about the Bahrain situation, and I wanted to just say that the Saudis, they're just, I seriously feel they're pathetic, because what they're doing is, it tells people that they're nothing but a puppet in Western hands. They're killing their fellow Muslims, and it's amazing that nobody is saying anything to them. And the other thing that amazes me is that all the human rights abuses that goes on in Saudi Arabia, West takes no notice of it. And anything goes around anywhere in the world, they just, start going on about human rights.
It's a very closed society. It's almost impossible to report freely there. I mean, it is impossible to report freely. But remember also, Mayor, that somehow there's a kind of, it's not just the West ordering these rich royal families in these Gulf states. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of power now. So I think there's a partnership between them and the West that keeps them both in power. What do you think of that?
Again, that's the thing. So they pay the West in terms of oil, and West reports nothing what goes on in there, because if you think about it, I know it's really difficult to report from within the Saudi, but the West, they go anywhere and report anything, even things that come out of that place. The Western media don't report on it. I mean, the thing is, what's happening in Bahrain, it is appalling.
Mayhem.
And the only thing Western people are doing is just protecting their people.
Well, it's come off the news agenda, hasn't it, Mayhem? Well, listen, I tell you, thanks for calling. Well, I mean, do you actually agree that it is off the news agenda from what you see in Britain now, that somehow people are forgetting about it? Oh, Mayor, I think Mayor's gone. Listen, Mayor, thank you for calling, and please call again next week if you can. You got some very interesting points. But I'm afraid we're coming up to a short break now. But please keep the calls coming. Remember, we are talking about Bahrain, Libya, and Yemen. It's a fascinating time. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to say. Keep those calls coming. I want to hear from you. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. See you soon.